The Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is a very significant piece of crypto legislation that is currently pending being approved. I will dive into that in this video. By the way, just for the algorithm, this is all for entertainment purposes only. Everything in this video is for entertainment purposes only. Now make sure you're subscribed because I will be doing a full breakdown on all the acts, the government procedures, government bills, etc., that have been put into motion in the past 18 months or so. And make sure you subscribe for that because this is really important information. You need to know what's happening in the crypto space. So make sure you're subscribed. This is going to be just a big information, like where are we in the current legislation of the cryptocurrency space, okay? So having said that, this is going to be this week's Crypto Astrology forecast where I will look at the Bitcoin charts and I will also discuss the Clarity Act and what is actually happening with the Clarity Act. So before I get into it, I want to just let you guys know the likelihood that the Clarity Act gets passed and put through in March is very, very high. I very much expect that this will happen. I have detailed timeframes for members, okay, over the whole month and when things are likely to happen, etc. So I'm going to first off explain to you the Clarity Act. So let's get a little overview of what's actually going on right now in the government, strategy forecast about, or, planning about the cryptocurrency market, okay? I'm going to read this and then I'm going to give you some thoughts about it afterwards. So bear with me while I put my glasses on and I read this. So the Clarity Act, Crypto Market Structure Bill. It is the most significant piece of pending crypto legislation. Introduced by House Financial Services Chairman French Hill, the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act aims to establish a comprehensive regulatory framework for digital assets in the U.S., prioritizing consumer protection while fostering innovation. That's what they say, okay? What it does. At its core, the bill would define oversight across the CFTC and the SEC, classifying tokens as either digital commodities or securities. A grandfather clause would allow certain tokens tied to spot ETF listed before January 1st, 2026, including XRP, Solana, Litecoin, Hedera, Dogecoin, and Chainlink, to be treated as commodities. Put a pin in that. Remember that. Commodities. Very important, okay? New projects would be able to raise up to $75 million annually without full SEC registration, subject to disclosure rules. So just this section, this is aiming to structure what these companies can and can't do in the U.S. market, right? The commodities, the tokens that are commodities, would make them treated in the same way as other commodities in the world. A commodity is a physical item that is used to create something else. It would be like, pork bellies or gold or silver. Well, actually gold is less that, but it still might fit under commodities. But silver is a commodity. Wheat is a commodity, right? Steel is a commodity. These are things that are used to create something else. Okay, so these are important, needed, necessary resources. So think about that with these specific cryptocurrencies: XRP, Solana, Litecoin, Hedera Hashgraph, Dogecoin, and Chainlink. This is 6 coins, okay, 6 different coins that the government has just told you are really important. So remember that. Okay, let's go on to the next section. Where it stands. The House already passed its own version with an overwhelming majority. On January 29th, 2026, the Senate Agriculture Committee advanced its version. Agriculture. What does agriculture control? Commodities. Okay, think this thing through. The Digital Commodity Intermediaries Act, on a party line 12-11 vote, marking the first time a crypto market structure bill has ever advanced beyond a Senate committee. The Senate Banking Committee's draft must also advance out of committee, and then the 2 drafts must be reconciled and merged before going to a full Senate vote. So this is also important to the banking industry. There's a whole battle going on between banks and cryptocurrency stablecoins right now. There was actually. What actually happened with that battle was that basically the banks won. So there was a battle because stablecoins were able to generate returns. They were able to give people interest on the stablecoins, which was greater than the interest that a bank could give you, because stablecoins have in their inception, the rules for the stablecoins based on the Genius Act. Stablecoins have to buy treasuries. Treasuries produce interest. So in the crypto market, people were able to generate interest on their stablecoins greater than the interest they could get in their bank account, which could kill banks, basically. Single-handedly could kill banks. Now, the entity that you would least expect to be on the side of the banks, Coinbase, was in fact on the side of the banks. So since that battle, what has actually happened is that the government has moved in favor of banks. Okay, they're trying to keep the banks in the loop, even though cryptocurrency and stablecoins could, with one swipe, kind of put them all out of business, because who wants to earn 1 or 2% in there, or even 4% in their checking account, when you can earn more with a stablecoin in the cryptocurrency space? Okay, and that would just take all the liquidity out of the banks if they didn't do something with the rules to protect the banks. Okay, so that's one piece of what's going on. So let's continue. There's key obstacles here. A scheduled Senate Banking Committee markup was postponed in early 2026 after Coinbase publicly withdrew its support, saying the current text would hamper innovation, weaken competition, and restrict stablecoin rewards. Now, this is ironic, considering what I just told you about how Coinbase was on the other side of the argument, at the WEF. This is where this happened. So this is a little bit of conflict. So Coinbase has very specific demands that it wants out of this structure, okay, out of how the market is being structured. So Coinbase is really in there, really making itself heard and felt in the whole process. By the way, Coinbase's alliances are the reason why I highly, highly recommend you do not put your money on Coinbase. You do not trade through Coinbase. There are a lot of other places that are better. And if you go in the link below, you can sign up on my mailing list, and you get the free crypto first aid kit, which is basically a set of strategies and ideas and thoughts about the crypto market that can help you to create a basic starting strategy for yourself or anybody else who needs one, right? I'm OG. I've been in crypto since 2016. I'm not one of the originals, but I've definitely been there for long enough to know what's actually going on. But let's continue. So unresolved issues include conflicts of interest, limits on exchange incentives, and the scope of obligations for DeFi developers. Now, DeFi is its own whole category, okay? On prediction markets like Polymarket, the odds of a Crypto Clarity Act passing in 2026 have dropped to 63%, down from a high of 82% in late February. Timeline: March approval is unlikely. That's what they say. I think it's very likely. JP Morgan analysts believe the bill could be approved by mid-2026, and the bill's sponsor said he hopes Congress can pass a version by hopefully next August. Okay, now I want to go over, let's just a couple of thoughts on this. That gives us 2 time frames, okay, when they would be repressing the price of Bitcoin in advance of the 2 potential time frames. When they're repressing the price of Bitcoin in advance of a passing of this legislation, because that's what they would do. They would push the price down, knowing that it's getting ready to be voted on and it might pass. So it's being pushed down so that the insiders can collect more of the assets, right? And then after it passes, then it would shoot up. Okay, so the 2 main time frames here would be March, right now, this month, and then the second time frame, and I have more specific details on the time frames that I expect that this repression could be happening in March, versus when we could go up, versus we could, there's a lot of zigzag happening in the market, so we're going to get more zigzagging in March. But then the next period of time when we can have the price really repressed is going to be headed into that next potential window of getting this passed, which would be in the summer. Okay, so these are the 2 windows where they would just basically put a weight on the crypto prices and keep it down until we lead into this potential vote. Now, I could be wrong. It might not happen in March. It could happen in August, but March is a big window of possibility. So bear that in mind, okay? So let's continue. what I want to do now is just give you a little overview of the other couple of the acts that are influencing this, okay? The Genius Act, which is stablecoin legislation, the Genius Act aimed to establish a regulatory framework for payment stablecoins and was signed into law by Trump in July of 2025. It is now in the implementation phase and will take effect either 18 months after enactment, which would be 18 months from July, which would be by the end of this year, 2026, right? Or 120 days after regulators approve related regulations, putting the real world timeline in 2026 or later. So 120 days after they approve related regulations. The related regulations would be the Clarity Act, right? So if it happens now in March, it would be 120 days after that approval. So that would be by June, sometime in June, if it happens in March. Or if it happens in summer, July or August, that would be 120 days after that, which would put us in fall. So these are the two timeframes when the Genius Act would go into effect, right? And then we also have the Bitcoin Act Strategic Reserve. This was introduced by Senator Lummis and others. The Bitcoin Act would establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve, a decentralized network of secure Bitcoin storage facilities distributed across the United States for the cold storage of government Bitcoin holdings. So the bottom line here is that none of the bills are expected by the authorities, the officials, channels, to be approved in March. The Clarity Act is the closest to meaningful action, but Senate gridlock, Coinbase's opposition, and partisan divisions make a near-term vote probably, iffy. Mid-2026 is most likely the optimistic, realistic target per JP Morgan and congressional insiders. So, they have a lot of fighting to do before they get to something that they all agree on, okay? And we know that they're going to set it up in a way that benefits their institutions. So this is where we stand right now, and we are in the workings where the wheels are moving and things can start to happen. Is it guaranteed to happen in March? No, because I'm going against what sort of JP Morgan and all these others are saying about it's probably going to take longer, and it might, certainly could, but it looks astrologically like it could happen in March, okay? And I have timeframes for that. However, now let's take a look at the Bitcoin charts and get a feel for what's happening next with the prices. So here we have Bitcoin, which has been in a channel, and it was in a channel, it broke out of that channel, actually went into a larger channel, right? Just kind of a little lower. So it's still in a channel, it's just a bigger channel. It hasn't really made a significant breakout to the upside or the downside. However, in the meantime, before we are likely to break out of this channel either up or down, we have potential, highs and lows, which are at the edges of the channel, which I told you guys last week. But also this has been a recent high, 69,894. This has been here for several weeks, this target level. So you guys have had that. We did hit it. We hit it twice, actually. We hit it here in February 25th, and then we hit it here again on March 2nd. So we could hit it again if we break through it. The next target, of course, is 72,005. But then the lower targets are down here at the bottom of this channel at 62,506. And then we have this target, which of course we hit back here in February 5th. And I had this target earlier than that. So this target we hit on February 5th is about 61,451. That was the candle didn't come down that far, but the wick did. So if you'd had an order here, it would have gone through, right? You would have been able to buy something here for these swings that are happening in this zigzag channel. The next lower target, if we go lower, is around 58,878. So that is the financial sort of numbers of what's going on with Bitcoin. None of this is guaranteed, right? You can see my past, track record of actions of what's happened. That actually there's a 4-minute video on my front page of my site where you can see a whole year of my calls. But none of this is guaranteed. None of this is financial advice. You should be doing your own research. You should understand how the crypto market moves. You should understand trading. This is why I give you a free trading course when you become a member, okay? And you become a member at auralwright.media. There's a whole free trading course for you that teaches you the fundamentals of the market so you can think for yourself, understanding how it works. You can always think for yourself. I hope you're always thinking for yourself. But the the thing is that you really want to understand the market, okay? And I can give you timeframes when things are likely to be doing ups and downs, right? And so that's what the members get, and that's what the timing report provides. I put that out on the 28th of February for March. So now we have a March timing report. So we have timeframes where I'm expecting what we can see happen next with this crypto move. And it has to unfold. It has to develop before I get a better specific idea of what these timeframes are going to give us. Okay. So that's where we're at with this week's Crypto Astrology. Oh, one other thing. I did just recently put out an XRP video. I will be doing a more specific granular timeframe look at XRP. Usually the whole market reacts based on what Bitcoin is doing. So if Bitcoin is making a big move up, usually we get a pullback in alts and then they shoot up. And if Bitcoin is going down, then the alts can go down even more. So, but so normally we look at alts as sort of a reflection or reaction to what's happening in Bitcoin. However, XRP has its own sort of lifespan. Okay. And I'm doing a more granular look at what's happening with XRP throughout this month and when we could get drops in it and drops, where those levels are, how low, what we might want to do, things like that. So this is just for March, but I have a longer term forecast also that I've given members on XRP. But I did just do an XRP video, so make sure you look on my playlist for that. But I would also like to point out something I did. Actually, I put out another video on XRP that's going to explain some things I see in the XRP chart pattern and why XRP could really be used by the system. Okay, of course, it was just mentioned in the Clarity Act. So, they like XRP on some level for some reason, and they look at it as a commodity, something that can be used to create other things. So those are some big takeaways for this week. Hope this finds you well. Happy trading. Good luck. I wish you success. And make sure you subscribe and share this video. Bye.